And welcome to my March edition of my book recommendations for grades 3 through 5. Um, my name is Jessica. I'm a clerk here at the Maston Public Library. If you've seen any of my previous videos, you know that I talk about our graphic novels. So today I decided to focus on I've done one previously on our nonfiction graphic novels, but today I wanted to focus solely on our nonfiction graphic novels of the historical variety. So these are graphic novels that are based on real historical events, and so the story is nonfiction, meaning it is not made up. Um, so we have quite a few of these available here at the library. So I wanted to go over a couple of them to show you what you can find that will not only be fun to read because it is in the graphic novel um, style, but also educational as well. So isn't that just the best mix of both worlds when you get something you get a little lesson out of and you can enjoy at the same time? So the first book I'm going to talk about is a standalone book that we have that we just got in recently. It is a new book. It is called Black Heroes of the Wild West. This is a graphic novel that in our juvenile section that focuses on three heroes from the American West that were all African American. Stagecoach Mary, Bass Reeves, and Bob Lemons. I know I personally have heard of Bass Reeves. They have said that the Lone Ranger was based off of Bass Reeves. So there's a real picture here in the front cover. You can see a real historical picture, but the rest of the book is the mixture of the real photographs, and then the rest of it is in graphic novel format. So what I think is great is that it gives you these sort of little history lessons, gives you an overview of the history of the American West and the African American people that were involved in what was considered the Wild West. And then it goes into the individual stories, first talking about Stagecoach Mary, then Bass Reeves, then Bob Lemons. And I just thought these were an absolute, just fun book to read because I personally really enjoy either reading nonfiction of the historical variety or what is sometimes called historical fiction. Now, you might wonder what is the difference between those. Nonfiction, when you're talking about history, is all verifiable information. So, it's true as far as we can verify it. There are sources to verify that it has some standing in history and believability to be true. Historical fiction is when authors take real historical facts and mix it with a fictional story. So in that context, they can maybe fictionalize whole characters. Sometimes they're using real people from history, but the fiction part comes in that like they maybe have to come up with their own version of maybe what that person would have said or what they would have done in a particular situation. But it has a very large basis in verifiable history. So I really like nonfiction stories about history because you might have heard the saying before that the truth is stranger than fiction. And I have found over and over again for that to be true. So if you really want to read some amazing stories, definitely don't overlook history. I know maybe it seems like it might be kind of boring because, sometimes history in school can be relegated to maybe just learning some dates or learning some names. But when you really dig into the stories of people's lives, you'll be amazed at the width and breadth of human ingenuity and like the perseverance of the human spirit. So I definitely recommend this graphic novel of Black heroes of the Wild West because it tells three fantastic, amazing tales that are almost, too strange to be believed, but they're true. So that's what makes them so entertaining. Another series of books that we have is Nathan Hale's Hazardous Tales. This particular one has to do with the Louisiana Purchase. So this one covers both. It says a tale of Haiti, Napoleon, and the Louisiana Purchase. So this one covers not just American history of the Louisiana Purchase, but it also goes into a couple other how a couple other countries factored into that as well. With this series, there are a few that are American history based. I know like we have one on the Underground Railroad. We have one on General Lafayette in the American Revolution. But they're not necessarily just relegated to American history. Now, what makes these fun is that they're told in a sort of framing device, which is called the framing device is what sort of frames the story. In this case, there was a real spy named Nathan Hale who was caught and unfortunately executed in 1776. But for the purpose of these books, the premise is that Nathan Hale, the spy, is waiting at the gallows to be executed, and he is telling these tales to the executioner and the sergeant, I believe, in charge. And so he is entertaining them with these sort of true tales of history. There is also Nathan Hale is the name of the real author. So he shares the name with the historical figure. On the back, you can see there is something called the hazard level. So it'll give you an overview of what to expect. One thing about history is that it is also often more gruesome than what you're likely to come across in fiction, particularly at your reading level. So these ones do deal with some real things that happened, and sometimes they can be a little bit gruesome. So just to be aware of that. They do try to make it, for kids, but if you're maybe a little squeamish or that's not your thing, you might maybe want to just pass these by. But if you like that sort of element of history and like a little bit of Black humor in your reading, then these are definitely worth giving a look at. And you can always look at the back and get a little quick view of what you're in store for. So these are called Nathan Hale's Hazardous Tales. This one is Blades of Freedom. I think we have about 6 or 7 of these here at Macedon. In the same vein of talking about historical fiction, I did also grab another series that we have. So far, we have 2 of these. These are called The Sons of Liberty. Now, this is historical fiction. So the characters in this and the character level tale is made up, but the elements around it are largely historically accurate, like talking about the American Revolution, talking about the pre-revolution America, the French and Indian War, also talking about the slave trade in America. So the main characters of this book are 2 African American boys, and they have sort of supernatural powers that can transform them into these 2 characters in this book called The Sons of Liberty. Now, I might have misspoken earlier. I thought this was about the American Revolution, but this is pre-revolution. Oh no, it is, but it's pre-revolution, so it's about the same era. At first, I'm sorry. I think I thought it was the Civil War, but it predates that. So what this book does is it takes real historical events and it puts this sort of supernatural twist on it. And what can make that enjoyable and can really make that fun is when you take historical figures that maybe didn't have a lot of self-agency or didn't have a lot of power. And authors can go back and give those characters power that they didn't have at the time, and which can be very cathartic for people who identify with those characters. So what this story does is it gives, I think I've said this before, sorry, it gives these characters these sort of supernatural powers of strength and um, and might. And also, when you're dealing with two children that would have been in an era where they had even less, self-agency and power, and they get to be these powerful grown-up characters. So that can be very, like I said, very, I don't want to say cathartic again, but that can be really empowering for young readers. So this is another series I recommend. Just know that this one isn't 100% historically accurate because obviously um, these two boys did not actually have these supernatural powers. So this is when you're taking history and putting a little bit of a fictional spin on it to just give it that extra level of entertainment, and to also ask that question of, what if? And it's perfectly possible and perfectly fine to do that, is to take historical events and create your own story. Sometimes it can be a really great base to start from, and then you can add your own fantastical elements, and that creates a really intriguing story. The last one I wanted to talk about is to say that we don't just have books based on American history. This is a graphic novel from the I Survived series. You might have seen the novels in our juvenile section. We have several of them. They are true stories about people who survived extraordinary circumstances. This particular graphic novel has to do with the Nazi invasion during World War II in the year 1944. So this would be, more worldly history. Again, it is told in the graphic novel format. And these are historically accurate tales. This is someone's individual life tale. So even though it's someone telling you their life story, it's still rooted in history. It's still rooted in truth. When you get into someone's personal account, you kind of cross over from nonfiction into either like memoir or autobiography. So you can see how you get these cross categories of literature. So if you're ever looking for true stories and you're not quite sure where to look, you can also ask any of the librarians and we can point you in the right direction. So just to tell you that it's not all American history, we do have some world history as well. So today I just wanted to do a little bit of highlighting some of our nonfiction graphic novels that dealt with historical events, to show you that history doesn't have to be boring. And often the tales that you find in history are far stranger and wilder than you could ever have imagined. And it can be so inspiring to read about these heroes and these people that really existed in our history, and it helps inspire us of what kind of people we want to be and what kind of people we can be as we really start to develop our sense of self and get a little older. So anytime that you're looking for anything like that, you can always come to the Macedon Public Library, and any of the librarians will be more than happy to help you find what you're looking for. I hope that these recommendations were helpful to you today, and I hope everyone's having a great, safe time. And I will see you next time for my April recommendations. Bye.